Good morning, everyone. Right. So let's start with the video.
Empowering the people who power our world. Since 1977, the Association of Energy Engineers has been leading the global energy community towards a clean and sustainable future.
Founded by Al Tooman, AEE emerged during a critical time when the world grappled with the oil crisis. Today, we're a global network of over 17,000 members and 32,000 certified professionals in over 125 countries, dedicated to implementing projects that improve energy efficiency, address climate change, and drive economic growth. AEE is a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving our members and other industry professionals by providing them with a framework where they can network, grow, and helping them stay abreast of the latest industry trends and empowering them to maintain a competitive edge through training and professional certification. AEE developed the energy management profession. Our certified energy manager certification is available in 10 languages and now has over 18,000 CEMs throughout the world. We also have certifications in energy auditing, building commissioning, sustainable development, renewable energy, carbon reduction, and a wide range of other specialized fields.
As we drive growth, innovation, and excellence across the industry, it's crucial that we empower all talented professionals to contribute. That's where CWEL, the Council on Women in Energy and Environmental Leadership, comes into play.
As a division of AEE, we are focused on supporting mentorship, networking, and scholarships for women.
The technical sessions were amazing.
The conference and expo is a great reflection of where we are in the industry. A lot of the exhibitors and content here is very current and very relevant. So it's a great way to come and get current with the industry.
What sets AEE apart is our commitment to driving change. We are a global family focused on putting people first and making the world better for current and future generations. The clean energy transition is happening now. So join us and be part of the community dedicated to this clean energy future.
Whether you're looking to advance your career, expand your network, or contribute to global climate goals, the Association of Energy Engineers is with you every step of the way. Together, we can shape the future of energy. Join us today.
All right, very good morning to everyone.
Empowering the people.
So let's start the show and start the presentation. My name is Kishan Khatri, President of Association of Energy Engineers GTA chapter. We call it AEE GTA chapter. So this chapter is one of the oldest chapter of the Canadian region. Association of Energy Engineers is a hub for energy professionals worldwide and global organization dedicated to being at the forefront of energy innovation. The AEE GTA chapter supports energy professionals by promoting best practices in energy management, supporting professional certifications like CEM, CMVP, CEA, you must be knowing that, creating a strong local network of energy and sustainability professionals, advancing decarbonization, energy efficiency, and ESG goals in Ontario and Canada. These are few upcoming events we have in the month of May. Currently, we had one event on May 7th last week. Upcoming events we have on May 13th, May 20th, May 25, and this May 27th has been postponed. So 3 events coming up in this month. What are these events? May 13th, we have on Wednesday, we have Blue Jays Social. This event is being organized in collaboration with Building Commissioning Association, Eastern Canada chapter. We are around 106 participants joining there. There are few tickets left. So if you are interested, you may join that. You may attend that. And if you want a complimentary membership for this year, you can take this code, which is there on the screen, and register for member pricing for this event. On May 20th, we have an event with our training partner, CIET. So the event is CIET Connect, where many courses along with AE courses are going to be, presented. It's free participation. Anyone can join. And this is, again, everyone is invited. On May 25, on Monday, we have event on virtual golf. So this event is being supported by CVL committee, our women leadership team. And there are only few seats available. So hurry up. And we have almost 50 or 60 participants joining in this event. This is again in collaboration with Women in ASHRAE Committee. Thanks to all our sponsors, annual sponsors, including BOMA Inspire, Carbon Cap, HCOM Energy, Enbridge, Armstrong, Ambient, Mechanical. For gold sponsor, we have Honeywell Forge. For silver sponsors, we have Aladaco, Kilmer, ENS, and Mitsubishi Electric. So today we are going to have a presentation today from Julian Kitchen, and this session will be on providing available offers and how customers and business partners can benefit. This session will provide an overview of current program offering, explain how participation can improve project economics, and show how the offers can strengthen customer proposals and job bids. So we have Julian Cousin today. He has been supporting Enbridge's customer in developing and implementing energy projects since 2018, and now leads the conservation team serving institutional customers across Ontario. Drawing on his HVAC background, strong technical expertise, and passion for energy efficiency, Julian helps colleges, universities, and hospitals identify opportunities to reduce operational and energy cost. Prior to joining Enbridge, he spent 2 years as an application engineer with another company, Mitsubishi, and specializing in commercial VRF and ventilation system design. Julian is a professional engineer of Ontario and holds certification as both as energy manager and a measurement and verification professional. So thank you, Julian, for joining today's session, and welcome to this session. Thank you.
Great. That was a great intro. Thanks, Kishan. I will share my screen now.
Sure. Yep.
Hopefully everyone can see this.
Yes.
Okay, I'll get started. Yeah, so thanks, Kishan, for the intro. Like Kishan said, my name is Julian Kazan. I'm one of the supervisors at Enbridge. And today I'm going to talk to you all about incentives and what we're offering and what's new in 2026. So I'll start off, I guess, with a little bit of background about Enbridge, right? You guys all know us as the Ontario gas utility, but maybe what you didn't know is that we're also in onshore and offshore wind power generation. We're also in solar farms, both in North America and offshore. We have one in Sarnia. We got a big one in Texas. We also do renewable natural gas. We also do hydrogen, right? So we're big believers in that diversified energy portfolio, especially as Ontario's energy demands keep growing, right? And one of those pathways to meet that energy demand is diversifying our energy portfolio, but it's also energy conservation, right? And making sure our buildings are using less instead of generating more. And that's kind of where my department comes in, right? I'm in the energy conservation department, or demand side management, or as we call it, DSM. So what is DSM? It's essentially the incentive programs, right? We've been doing it for 30 years. In those 30 years, we've delivered over 300 million in incentives alone, and we've enabled 12 billion in lifetime M-cubes of gas savings. The programs are really for pretty much everyone in Ontario who has a gas bill, right? So today I'm going to be talking about the commercial and the low income programs, but we have residential programs, right? You might be familiar with smart thermostats or, attic insulation and that kind of stuff. We have industrial programs, right, for large manufacturing customers. And we have programs for the large volume sectors, right? Even power generation customers, we have programs for them. I don't think I need to really go into too much detail about the benefits of energy conservation, right, and incentives to this audience. But as we know, it helps with resiliency and reliability. And there's energy savings and cost savings from doing these projects, right? So that's all very intuitive to us, I think. Before I go into the programs, I kind of want to talk about the Energy Solutions Advisor role we have at Enbridge. So we employ about almost, I think, 60 advisors across Ontario to help you guys pursue incentives, identify projects. We're essentially your connection to the funding we have available and to creating these energy projects. So it doesn't really matter what sector you're in or where you are in Ontario. If you're a greenhouse in Windsor or if you're a hospital in Ottawa, we have an advisor for you who's in that area, who specializes in that sector. So I don't expect you guys to be an expert on any things I'm going to talk about today. We have a team of experts that can help you with the projects and with the incentives. My contact will be at the end of the slide deck as well. So if you don't know who your advisor is, you can absolutely reach out to me and I can connect you with them, and then you can get the conversation started. So at a high level, how does the incentive program work, right? So number one, we want to identify projects. So maybe you have a pipeline of projects that you're looking to implement, energy efficiency projects. Maybe you don't know what's possible for your building, right? That's where an advisor could help. Maybe that's where some audit funding can help. Once we kind of know what the projects are going to be or what we should be targeting, we can quantify the savings and quantify the incentives. So we'll work with you. We'll take some technical information from you, from your site. We'll come up with a savings value. And from that savings value, we'll come up with an incentive for the project. And then from there, it's pretty straightforward. It's just we need an invoice once the project is complete, and then your check's in the mail, right? Or we'll deliver it ourselves in about 4 to 6 weeks. There's no M&V process to our programs. It's all based on engineered calculated savings. Our projects are audited by the Ontario Energy Board, so the savings are realistic. We are even, I would say, conservative in some of the assumptions that we make in the calculations. But the savings are very realistic with no M&V required. And that will take me into the first program we have, which is the prescriptive incentive offers, right? This functions similar to like a coupon book. I guess that's the way to compare it to. Maybe an example most of us are familiar with is the home thermostat program, right? So, you go out, you buy a smart thermostat for your house, and Enbridge gives you $75 back, right? So this would be similar to that, except at a commercial scale, right? When you're buying commercial equipment. So for example, I know I go out and buy a certain size air curtain, I get $6,000. Right? I go out and buy an ERV or an HRV, I get $5,000, $8,000. I get a hybrid rooftop unit, I get up to $18,000, right? So the incentive essentially is fixed and it scales with the capacity of the unit that you're implementing.
So Julian, there are two questions.
Sure, yeah, we go back, yeah.
So one is from Faisal. Are there any plans from Enbridge to develop a customer portal for online application submission and tracking?
Yes, there is plans for that. We are working on that right now. It will be through customers or through a contractor able to submit the application through a portal.
Okay, another question is from Hari. Do you share how the calculations are done?
Yes, we do. Yeah, good question. I'm going to go into some case studies at the end, and we will talk about some example projects and some sample calculations in there. But absolutely, we are working with you to collect the data, and a lot of the times we send the customer or the consultant or whoever the calculations to review themselves, right, and get input to make sure that we have the right assumptions, the right technical details, etc. So absolutely, they can be shared for sure.
Okay, thank you, Julian.
Yeah. We do have our own proprietary software as well that does some calculations, but again, we can, make some of the back-end calculations public to you and let you know what's happening and how we're getting to those values. Okay. So continuing on here, I'll just talk about maybe some of the highlights, some of the more popular prescriptive incentives that we have. To start off with, we have adaptive thermostats. This is a new one this year. similar to the residential program I was just talking about, right? Except for commercial buildings, right? Like schools or commercial real estate. It's pretty simple. You put in a programmable thermostat or one with occupancy-based setbacks, you get $200 per unit. This is our most popular prescriptive incentive. We launched it last year, and it's been the most popular for the last 2 years. It's a hybrid rooftop incentive. And just so we're all on the same page, a hybrid rooftop unit is one that has dual fuel. You have gas backup for the really cold days, but your primary source of heating and cooling is going to be heat pump in the unit. And so you can take advantage of this incentive if you have a gas-fired unit that you're replacing with a hybrid unit. And the table kind of shows, okay, like I was saying, based on the capacity of the unit, as it increases, the incentive also increases. And I'll also note that the heating capacity on the left here is based on the heat pump heating capacity, right? Not on the gas side. But yeah, as that increases, your incentive increases. And if you go over 200,000 kBTU, then it just goes to $40 per kBTU. So I think it's a really lucrative incentive. And typically it does cover the cost difference between a regular gas-fired unit that you would put in like for like versus this premium option. Here's another popular one that we incentivize. It's demand-controlled kitchen ventilation. And for some of us who have commercial kitchens or have experience with commercial kitchens, the staff maybe goes in the morning, they flip on the exhaust for the cooktop, and then they leave it running the whole day, right? And they turn it off when they leave, or maybe they don't turn it off at all when they leave. So demand-controlled kitchen ventilation kind of looks to alleviate that problem. It's measuring the temperature above the grill. It's looking for particulate matter like smoke above the grill, and then it essentially modulates your exhaust based on the activity of the cooking, right? Like the hybrid RTU offer, based on the capacity or based on the CFM of your exhaust hood, you get an increasing incentive. I should also highlight, for all these prescriptive incentives, you can get them from new construction as well, right? It's not just limited to retrofit. It's just that sometimes the rates are slightly different between a retrofit installation and a new construction installation. And that's the case with DCKV. But these prescriptive incentives, they apply to both retrofit and new construction. Here's another easy one, D-strat fans, really good for warehouses. I think we're familiar with the stratification effect, right? Heat rises. So instead of trying to pump in and use all this gas to heat up the, your base, the close to the floor area that's 59F, right? And keep the workers happy. Instead, you could spend a little bit of energy and spin a fan and then push that hot air down to the floor, right? And then use a lot less gas to create this even temperature profile across the building. It's a simple incentive, based on the diameter of the fan. Either you get $3,000, or for some of the larger ones, you get $4,000 per unit. And finally, Dr. Seals, our other popular one, another really simple technology, right? If you think of a truck backing into the bay and loading and unloading, there's huge infiltration there, right? Because essentially you've just created a huge window that leads into a truck, and there's a ton of cold air or hot air entering or leaving your building. So instead, this just creates an airtight seal around the truck, and it's intuitive. You save gas, you save electricity by not having a huge open window to the outside, right? That's interacting with your building. Similar to the D-strat fan option, it's really just two incentives. Either you have a $650 per unit incentive, or if you're doing a 10 by 10 door, you get $1,650 per unit. And all these incentives I talked about, all the money I'm talking about, the funding I'm talking about, is for customers. Like, what if you're a consultant? What if you're a contractor, a manufacturer? We have incentives for you guys as well for helping out with the incentive process. So if you're involved in some way in the incentive process, whether that's making a customer even aware that there's incentives available for their equipment, whether it's providing technical details, we'll actually list your name on the application, or we'll list you in our system. And then when we pay out the customer, you also get an incentive per unit that you've helped install. In this case, it's typically $150 per unit. On top of that, there's also a one-time bonus, depending on the volume of units you've done. So this is for the calendar year. I know some people's fiscal years are different than the calendar year, but for the calendar year, if you've done, for example, 50 units, you've helped incentivize 50 units across all of our customers, you get $2,000, right? And that scales up. If you do over 100, you get 5,000. If you do over 200, you get 8,000. This is in addition to the $150 you're getting per unit. So it's a nice little bonus, I guess, and to show our appreciation for you guys helping out with the incentive process and, getting some customers into the incentive ecosystem, right? And like I said at the start, you guys don't have to be experts about any of this. There's our website there if you want to look into some more prescriptive incentives. It's enbridgegas.com/prescriptive incentive. We will be sharing this deck at the end as well. But for a prescriptive incentive, it's really simple. You need three things generally. You need a cut sheet or submittal of the equipment. You need a project invoice, and then your ESA will send you a completed application form where you just sign and date at the bottom, right? So again, if you don't know your ESA, I can connect you with the right person, but really applying for these prescriptive incentives, it's the easiest incentives to get. It's really straightforward. The rates are advertised up front, and we'll even help guide you through the process, including providing the application form. Now we can talk about the custom incentive offers, right? So this is the bread and butter of our incentive programs. What if you're doing like a BAS upgrade, right, or ventilation reduction, or if you're doing an economizer project, steam trap replacements, heat recovery chillers, right? These are not prescriptive incentives. These would be custom incentives, right? And so the custom incentive program is designed around calculating the energy savings from doing a project and then paying an incentive based on those calculated savings. So as I said, we do the legwork in doing those calculations, right? We'll go to site, we'll look at your equipment, we'll work with you, we'll work with the consultant to take some data and understand the base case of how your system is operating right now. And then based on the energy efficiency improvements that you could implement, that delta between the two cases creates gas savings, and that's what the incentive is eventually based on, right, and paid on. And so what is the custom incentive rate? This year, it's 40 cents per M cubed natural gas saved. As I said, there's no M&V to get this incentive, right? It's all based on the calculated savings that we do. Last year, this incentive rate was 25 cents, so it's quite a bit better. And we actually do up to 75% coverage for a project now. So last year, again, I think it's always been 50% cost covered. Now we're willing to go up to 75% cost covered, up to $100,000 per project, or, for my team, it's $500,000 for institutional accounts. And how we classify institutional accounts is hospitals, universities, colleges, wastewater treatment, and district energy plants. So they get a little bit more of a cap on the incentives, but the rates are the same essentially across all commercial customers. And like I was saying, ventilation reduction, right? Ventilation type projects, heat recovery opportunities, economizers, blowdown heat recovery chillers, steam trap replacements, steam pressure reduction, right? Reducing boiler cycling, right? Lead lag set up on boilers. All these things are custom projects that we would incentivize. If it's going to save gas, we're willing to look at it. We're willing to do a savings calculation, and we're probably willing to give funding to it as well. So now I'll say, what if you don't know the projects in your building, right? You need help identifying what I should even proceed with. We have study funding as well, right, to kind of uncover these energy efficiency opportunities. So some examples of those studies that we would support would be things like engineering feasibility studies. Do I have a year-round cooling load and heating load to really justify a heat recovery chiller? Or should I even be doing that? Steam trap surveys, right? Can I find my failed traps or my passing traps and replace those? Air balancing is another common one that we do. Are you over-ventilating spaces, right? Do you have a negative pressure differential where you shouldn't? Other ones would be like control audits, right? So essentially, if the audit is going to cover some kind of gas-saving measure, we're typically willing to support it. And the coverage we have is in that table on the right. So based on the previous year's annual gas consumption for that gas account, which we can reference, right? We can look up ourselves and provide you that value. But based on the consumption of the account, you get between $6,000, and for some of our large consumers, you get $20,000 to do an audit, up to 50% of the audit cost. Now, you don't have to do an audit incentive to get a custom incentive. It's really, you can do one, you can do the other, you could do both, right? If you have a pipeline of projects, you already kind of know what you want to do, or we've identified some low-hanging fruit with you that doesn't require an audit, absolutely, you can get 40 cents per M cubed. You don't need to do an audit, right? But if you do want to pursue an audit to identify some of those opportunities, absolutely, we can fund that. And then once you implement the opportunities in the audit, you get an additional incentive on the capital side, right? The 40 cents per M cubed. And I'll talk about the controls limited time offer here. I think we've run this for the last 2 years and we're running it again this year. So if you do a controls project and you have some kind of MOU or PO prior to July 1st, like some commitment that's going to be installed this year, and it does get installed prior to November, then the incentive goes up 3 times. So instead of being a 40 cents per M cubed offer, it's now $1.20 for a controls project. What is a controls project? Well, it's quite broad. I think you could ask 10 people and you get 10 different answers for what a controls project it is. But it's like I said, it could be ventilation reduction, it could be optimal start, it could be units running when they're not supposed to, right, and scheduling them properly. And it could be things like lead lag, reducing cycling on your boilers. All these kinds of things are controls projects, and they all get 3 times the incentive as long as you commit prior to July 1st, and you can install it this year. The coverage is still the same. You still get up to 75%. And the projects that I've seen this year, at least, a lot of them are hitting that 75% cost covered mark. So absolutely reach out to us. We are funding most of these projects right now, most of the costs for these projects. And I'll briefly go into affordable housing incentives. So everything I talked about for the custom program, nothing changes for affordable housing. The only thing that's changing really is the rates of the incentive, right? Because this sector, they're typically strapped for cash. They don't have the capital to invest in these projects, so they need an increased amount of funding. So if you are an affordable housing customer, or you're working with an affordable housing customer, instead of getting the 40 cents per M cube, they actually get $2.50 per M cube natural gas saved. And instead of having 75% cost covered, this is 85% coverage. Instead of 100,000, they get $200,000 per project. But otherwise, everything we talked about, the custom program, the types of projects, it's all the same for affordable housing, just the rates are better. Energy assessments, exactly the same as what I was talking about on the commercial side, except it's just $8,000 flat for the assessment. And it's not capped at 50% for these types of customers. We can cover 100% of the cost covered to do an audit, right? So if you can do a steam trap, typically we will cover 100% of the cost to do the steam trap at an affordable housing customer's site, and they just get up to 8,000, right? We cover all of it. So, and similarly to the controls offer, again, affordable housing, it's a bit unique because we're giving $3 per M cube for any project, not necessarily just a controls project, with the same timelines as what I dictated before, right? So you have commit by July 1st of this year, implement it before November, essentially implement it this year, and then the incentive goes from $2.50 per M cubed to $3 per M cubed, right? Still with the same caps, 85% project cost, or $200,000 per project. And I'll talk a bit about how to make the most of incentives, or maybe some lesser known programs that we have, lesser known incentives that we have. I'll start off with a piece about combining incentives because we still get asked this, and I want to make sure that everyone's applying for all the funding available. But can you apply for Enbridge Gas and ISO incentives? Yes, you can apply for both for the same project. You can apply for federal funding for doing low carbon economy fund or something like that. Any kind of funding stream can be combined with our incentives. The only caveat is that you cannot profit off the incentive, right? So, Save on Energy is going to give you 75%. We're going to give you 75% of the project cost. That's 150%. You can't pocket the 50%, right? It's going to be capped at 100%. But otherwise, you should absolutely take advantage of, both utilities' offerings of the public funding that's out there, and combine them to cover 100% of the project cost, right? We've seen that before, where both utilities essentially make the project free in that case. And some lesser known incentives. Kishan was talking about CEM, so we do support CEM with the ISO. That's I think we're familiar with it, but it's essentially a course offered by CIET. It's like a 1-week course with an exam at the end. That's great for energy managers or just understanding energy management in commercial buildings and industrial buildings. And yeah, we cover 75% of that, up to $2,500 for that course. Similarly, if you're an operator, we have the Certified Sustainable Building Operator Program, also delivered by the CIET. And again, we're covering 75% of the tuition fees, up to $2,250. The middle one is pretty interesting. This is a NRCan workshop delivered by CIET, and essentially it's a custom tailored educational program for your facility staff, based on the sector, based on what you want to educate your staff on, right? It could be, how do I develop an energy management team? It could be training on how do I create a business case? Like, what are the financials of doing an energy efficiency project? It could be very technical. It could be, what opportunities I should be looking for in a hot water system or lighting and these kinds of things. So the workshop is really tailored by CET to your needs and your organization's needs. But it's something that we're willing to cover, right? Up to 75% of the cost, or $500 per day for the workshops. You don't have to go through the dollars and cents energy management workshop. If you want to put on your own workshop for your staff or your employees, and invite some vendors in, and do your own education, invite us in to talk about energy efficiency and incentives, that's also something that we're willing to support, right? We've done that in the past where we've paid for the venue space and the food, and done a joint presentation to kind of educate your staff and change the culture of your facility. So if that's something you're interested in as well, that is also something that we're willing to fund. And that's a conversation you can have with your ESA, and we can kind of get the ball rolling on something like that.
So there's a question, Julian.
Sure.
What is expiry of these programs, and is there a limit to the incentive?
Is there an expiry for these programs? No, there is no expiry for these programs. We've been doing it for 30 years. We're going to be doing it, I think, almost forever at this point. So the only caveat to that, Kishan, is the limited time offers, right? So the controls offer, like I said, you have to submit a PO by July 1st and complete it this year. But otherwise, the prescriptive incentives, they're always in the market. So you do a project this year or next year or the year after, they're always there. And the incentive rates usually go up. So, if you do it in a later year, you might even get a larger incentive for doing it.
Okay.
What was the second part of that question, Kishan? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, limit to incentive.
Limited,
cap.
Yeah. The cap is, I guess, as was shown in the slides. So depending on the project, it's typically 75% of the project cost is the cap on our incentive, up to $100,000 per project for commercial customers, or for an institutional customer, it's up to $500,000 per project. But there's no limit to the amount of projects you could do per year. So if you want to do 10 projects and get $100,000 for each project, you can absolutely do it, right? There's no limit in that sense.
So the follow-up question was that if customer is replacing 25 to 50 RTUs, will get incentive for all units?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, you will get incentive for all the units. That's right.
And there's another question from Alan. Is there any specific incentive available for industrial units like heat pumps?
Like heat pumps? Yes. So
industrial specific,
yes. So if it's an industrial customer, we have industrial incentives. I'm not covering that in this slide, but they have their own incentives, very similar to ours. The custom incentive program, nothing really changes, right? In terms of them working with you and doing a gas savings calculation and providing an incentive on that gas savings. If it's heat pumps in particular, again, yeah, we do support heat pumps. We do support heat recovery chillers, these kinds of fuel switching technologies. As long as the efficiency of the facility is increasing, we're willing to support those projects through the custom program. So we're going to do some calculations on, how much gas and how much electricity you're using with that heat pump. And then based on the gas savings, you'll still get an incentive for all the avoided gas from using that heat pump. Whether it's industrial setting or commercial setting, that applies. So.
Thank you, Julian.
Yeah, no problem. And now I'll go into the final part of the presentation, which is case studies, my favorite part. I like it because I think it gives us some example projects that maybe, we could see being implemented in our own buildings, right? And it's one thing to talk about the incentives, but it's another thing to kind of see the real world application of the incentives in the projects, right? So I'll start off with a really simple one. This was at Mavati Fitness. So Mavati is a franchise across Ontario, and this location in particular was in Windsor. And they got $25,000 from us, essentially all from prescriptive incentives. So they worked with the ESA, they went through that coupon book list, right, of essentially technologies that they could implement and get a fixed incentive. They said, okay, we don't have any air curtains on the pedestrian vestibules, right? let's put those and get a couple $1,000s for that. We don't really have any humidity control. We're not really recovering all the humidity in the spaces. Why don't we put in some ERVs? I got a couple $1,000s for doing that. Didn't have any DCV, right? They weren't really modulating their fresh air based on how hard people were working out or how many people were working out. They put a few DCV sensors in and they got a couple $1,000s from us. So really simple project. They got 25 grand and they ended up saving 60,000, all from just doing prescriptive measures. Here's a bit of a more complex and larger one. This was a custom incentive that we gave to York University. It's a project I worked on, I think, 2 years ago, and it was an economizer on one of their central steam plant boilers. So York University worked with us, right? We kind of wanted to understand the current existing operation of the plant. So they provided some technical details about their boilers. This would be things like, they had a trend of their firing rate. Fantastic, right? How often the boilers are running. We asked for things like simple things like operating pressure of the boilers, makeup water percentage of the plant, maybe flue gas temperature, O2 percentage, right? Things like these operating characteristics of the boilers. And then we kind of map out how the current plant is operating. And then we said, okay, if you drop the flue temperature by, 120, 150 F, and you put an economizer in there and fed that heat into the feed water, what is the expected savings you could get? Right? So we came up with a business case, we came up with an incentive, and the project was essentially a slam dunk, right? They're saving 800,000 M cubes per year with the economizer. It only cost them barely 300,000, didn't even cost them 300,000. And we covered almost 50% of the cost with an incentive, right? So I guess this is the kind of scale that we can go up to with a custom incentive program, right? It's not just limited to controls projects or quick turnaround projects. We're really willing to look at, any kind of gas savings measure and try to provide an incentive for it and provide an energy savings calculation for it. Similarly, another custom project that I did last year with Confederation College in Thunder Bay. And I think this one probably speaks to most of us because it's essentially a controls project that's looking to eliminate units running when they're not supposed to. I think maybe we've seen that a lot in a lot of buildings, right? Units running when they're not supposed to, or over-ventilating, providing too much fresh air. So what we did was, we worked with Confederation and we just reduced the hours of operation, right? They shouldn't be running when there's no students even in the classroom. And based on the ASHRAE 62.1 ventilation guidelines, we could determine, okay, how much fresh air is actually required for this zone type and the square footage of this space, and tune the units down. So we dropped the hours of operation, we dropped the fresh air, there's gas savings. So they had 30,000 M cubes of annual gas savings, and they got $30,000 to do it, right? This was a $1 per 1 M cubed project. If they did this project this year with the controls incentive offer that we have at $1.20, it would be $36,000, right? And at that point, we're covering over half the project cost, and this is paying back in, I think, less than 3 years. Here's another big project done by my colleague, Adam, out in Waterloo. And this was a heat recovery chiller project, right? So, Waterloo, it's a huge campus, it's a huge customer. They have this big year-round cooling load with a data center. They have a big year-round heating load because we need space heating in the winter. We need domestic hot water all the time. They have a summer reheat load. So they are an ideal candidate for a heat recovery chiller project. So, similar to the York University project that I talked about, Adam worked with them, took some technical details, put together a business case for putting in a heat recovery chiller, and the university ended up pursuing it, right? They're saving over 1 million M cubes of natural gas by doing this project. The cost was 2.4 million, and we ended up giving 160,000 to them for this one. Another simple one, I won't go into too much detail about this one, but I just like to highlight it because this is one of the projects where there's an ISO incentive and an Enbridge Gas incentive, right? It's one of those measures where you put a VFD on an AHU and you're going to get cooling savings, you're going to get motor savings, and you're going to get heating savings. So why not apply for both utilities incentives, right? So in this case, we gave over 11,000 as an incentive. The ISO gave 6,500 or so, and we ended up covering 74% of the total project cost. Other measures that you could kind of double dip would be things like, pumping strategy is often something that we see both utilities incentivize, or VFDs on pumps. HRVs, ERVs, those kinds of things are also dual incentivized. So, just think if there's some kind of interactive effects on the cooling side and the heating side, both utilities are probably willing to support it. And you combine the incentives to cover a lot of the project cost, almost 100% of it in some cases. And this is the last ventilation project I'll talk about, the second last case study I'm going to go into. But I kind of want to give you guys, I guess, some idea of how we do the calculations, right? And kind of what we're looking for when we go to site and some of the data collection that we're doing. So in this example, there was a parking garage where they had CO2 detection, but either it was shut off or not working. So they're essentially ventilating 24/7, 40,000 CFM of fresh air all the time into this garage, over-ventilating it, running when it's not supposed to, right? So this is, low-hanging fruit to me, an easy energy project we should be doing. And so what are we looking for? What's the data collection? How do we do these calculations, right? First off, we'll just identify units that are serving that space, right? We got 4 MUAs serving those zones. And what are the CFM of those units, right? We don't really want to look at rated CFM. We kind of want to understand exactly, or an estimated amount of CFM that those units are supplying right now as the base case. And then the proposed case is, okay, it's running 24/7 at this 40,000 CFM. How much should it actually be running, right? If we had proper CO detection, if we had proper occupancy setbacks, and what is the actual CFM that should be supplied to that space, right? Based on ASHRAE fundamentals, looking at square footage, looking at zone type, et cetera, right? So, we do that data collection, and then we look at the proposed case about how it should be operating. And then we have a delta between the hours of operation. We have a delta between the CFM, and then we can come up with a saving value, right? You're saving over 20,000 CFM of heated fresh air that you don't need to supply anymore. And then we get to the final savings for the project, right? So start with 40,000 CFM, 24/7 operation, and I trim that down by about 2/3 of the hours, right? I'm at 5,300 hours, and I'm only delivering half the CFM now. So a pretty easy project. Just to get CO detection running, just to get occupancy setbacks running. The customer ended up saving $41,000 per year. The incentive is $76,000 for a project cost of $101,000, right? The payback is really fast at 7 months. And I know, a lot of us, we can't always make decisions ourselves on how to spend money and secure capital. So, if you're telling management, you're telling a CFO, I got a project that's going to pay back in 7 months, I don't think anybody would say no to that, right? So this one was, again, it was a slam dunk. You spend essentially $25,000 to save $41,000 per year, right? And that's with the controls incentive this year. And my final case study I'll talk about is the Toronto Western Hospital wastewater heat recovery project. So some of you might be familiar because this was a huge project. The way I would describe it is, if you think of geothermal heat pumps serving a hospital, instead of the heat source, heat sink being the ground, instead imagine it's a huge wastewater sewer line, right? The benefits of that is that the wastewater sewer line, you can't really freeze it. There's so much energy in there that it's like limitless for the hospital to, interact with it, as opposed to the ground where you kind of have to watch how much you're interacting with the ground when you're doing a geothermal system. Wastewater is also 20 degrees Celsius year round, as opposed to the ground that's like 8 to 10 degrees Celsius. So you get some benefits on the COP and the efficiency of the heat pumps. So we supported this project in 2024. We gave them an incentive of 500,000, and they saved over 4 million M cubes, which I believe was about 50 to 60% of their total consumption. And I like to show this project again, just to highlight, I guess, the scale of the custom program, right? So, we could be doing the low-hanging fruit, we could be doing some controls optimizations and smaller projects, but the custom program really scales up to the size and the aspirations of your project. So if you want to do a heat recovery chiller, you want to do a big wastewater heat recovery project, absolutely, that's something that we're willing to look into, and we're willing to fund, and the incentive kind of scales with the size and the complexity of the project as well. And that's all I had for today. There is my contact. Like I said, you don't have to be an expert on any of this kind of stuff. The easiest thing you can do is reach out to your Enbridge rep, your ESA, and they will guide you through the incentive process. They'll help you identify projects, and they'll ensure that you're getting the most funding that's available to you. So if you don't know who your ESA is, or you need a contact, there's my email, julian.kazan@enbridge.com. So reach out to me, and I can guide you to your ESA. Alternatively, we have the energy services at Enbridge inbox. We check that daily. So, you can shoot them an email and they'll respond to you, they'll respond to your questions about incentives, about projects, and they'll connect you with the advisor who's right for your sector and your territory in Ontario. And that's it. Thanks for having me. We have some time for Q&A if there's any additional questions as well.
Yeah, so there are a couple of more questions. In one of the case study, it was asked, did you calculate the gas savings ahead of the project?
Yes. So how it works is before the project is even implemented, right, we will develop a business case with you. So we'll go to site, we'll collect data, we'll ask you for some technical data, we'll guide you through the kind of inputs we want for the calculation, and then we provide you that savings estimate upfront and incentive estimate upfront before you even decide that I'm going to do the project, right? We're going to work with you to make sure that the business case makes sense. And so we'll provide you those calculations and incentive values and savings right when you start talking to us. You don't have to wait, to implement the project or to get the incentive or anything like that.
And another question is, can business owners hire third-party certified energy auditors for both prescriptive and custom measures projects, and will their assessment fee be refunded as project cost?
Yes. So the audit funding essentially covers third-party auditors, consultants, whoever, right? So we're not doing the audit ourselves. We're providing audit funding for you to go out and, we could recommend consultants for you if you don't have one, or if you want to choose your own consultant, you can absolutely do that. And then our audit funding essentially offsets the cost for them to do the audit. In terms of design fees and that kind of stuff for a project, that is actually included in the project cost as well if you don't do an audit, and we will incentivize against that as the project cost for the project, along with installation and the purchase of the equipment, right? That goes all into the project cost.
And another question is, are these case studies available on the Enbridge Gas website?
Oh, good question. I'm going to be sending the deck out, or I'll send it to Kishan, and Kishan, you can send the deck out. So you will have the case study slides. Some of them are available on the website. I don't know if all of them are available, but if you're interested in any of the projects, reach out to me. I did work on a lot of them, so I can give you any kind of details you want about the projects, or connect you with the advisor who did the project, and you can get a lot of details on the case study and the project type for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Feel free to put in the chat before we, move towards the conclusion slides. Okay. So where can be eligible models of equipments like air source heat pump can be found? Is there a particular link for that?
Eligible models. So there's no eligible models list that we really have. We're just covering the technology in general. So if you're doing a hybrid RTU, it doesn't matter who the manufacturer is or who the model is. We're essentially saying we're covering all hybrid RTUs as long as they're replacing a gas-fired unit. For heat pumps in particular, heat recovery chillers, those technologies that are not, not talking about hybrid RTUs, talking about, a condensing unit with an indoor unit or something like that, those kind of heat pumps would fall into the custom program. Again, there's no approved vendor list or anything like that. We just care about the technology and the savings the project can generate, right? So it doesn't matter who you're using, it doesn't matter who the vendor is. We're willing to support it. We're willing to do an incentive for it. None of that matters to us.
Yeah, so can any contractor install upgrades?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Any contractor can install upgrades. We can recommend contractors if a customer wants, but they can choose their own. Any contractor can do it. We have no preference.
Thank you, Julian. I think we have covered all the questions, and
Okay.
I really appreciate your time and the great presentation you have given to the audience and attendees today. We will send this presentation to all the participants, and let me share my screen.
Sure.
So if anyone is interested to attend our Blue Jay Social, we have only few seats available. Take this code, take the complimentary membership for this year, and get into the social event. That event is in collaboration with Building Commissioning Association, ECC chapter, and AEGTA. It's a wonderful opportunity to meet the members of each other's organization. We'll pause here for 1 minute so that you can scan the code and register for the event if interested. All right. So thank you so much to all the participants once again. And we will come up with the next webinar, Coffee and Conversation series next month. Stay tuned. We will be sharing more event details of other events on our website. So subscribe to our website, and thank you once again. Have a good day.